Welcome to the Just Word Podcast. I'm Pat Bolland. The Just Word Podcast is brought to you by Justwealth, investing the way it should be, just for you. You know, as an investor, I think a lot of investors think if they really make it big, someday they'll buy a vineyard. I don't know whether that's a good idea, but I'm not an expert. I know a guy who is, though. Rennie is the CEO of the Niagara Custom Crush and founder of Rennie Estate Winery. He joins us right after this. Graham, great to see you again.
It's been too long. You look great.
And thank you. And you too. And I understand that that's your vineyard that we see behind you.
That is a original painting by a local artist of our vineyard, correct?
Unbelievable. Okay. When did you first get interested in wine and becoming a wine person?
Well, I think I first became interested in wine when I was at high school, just skiing, and I needed something to fill up the old goat skin. Jacket. I think I was buying Cesardi red in those days, or something really cheap, and I kind of moved up the food chain. And when I was working in Banff, Alberta as a lifeguard, I was drinking a lot of baby duck on the Bull River on my days off.
Both of those sound like bad ideas.
I know, but I prefer drinking. I just found out that I prefer drinking wine to beer. So, I was a bit of an outlier compared to most of our peers, right, at the time. But I always had an affiliation, more of an interest in wine than beer. So, but I really got interested in wine, I guess, once we bought this vineyard back in '97. We were kind of reallocating part of our asset allocation, and I wanted some real estate. My wife and I are both interested in wine, had traveled pretty extensively and visited many wineries and vineyards in Europe and in California, Oregon. And we said, there'd be kind of a cool thing to do one day to have a vineyard site. And so we were down for a weekend in October of '97, staying in the lovely town of Jordan, and met Len Pinicchetti. Len is, was one of the founders of our industry here on the bench. And after a conversation with him, got the bug. And
so you buy this farm. It was an existing vineyard then?
It had been a vineyard in the '60s. It's probably one of the oldest vineyards on the Beansville bench. Had been planted to Labrusca type grapes, Vitis Labrusca, Concords and Niagara grapes for jam, and had gone into a state of disrepair. And so we bought it, replanted the entire vineyard in '99, and without much of a plan, other than we knew we had an amazing site and a 50-acre site, planted 44 acres, and began the journey of the next stage of our life here in the wine country.
Did you know anything about growing grapes?
No, I didn't. But there's a ton of resources in this area, lots of expertise, and a very sharing community. So I was very quickly, put in touch with all the key movers and shakers. And of course, we have Niagara College, which has a school of winemaking and hospitality. You have Brock University with its Covey program. So there is a lot of people in the area here who are very knowledgeable and are helpful.
Okay, but even when you plant grapes, my understanding it takes many years before you're going to have something that's harvestable, never mind tasting any good. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, it's about, from the season that you plant, the spring you plant, it's usually 3 years before you get fruit that you can use for wine. It's usually not amazing fruit. You can make wine from it. It takes about 5, 6, 7 years to get into that sweet spot, and then from then on, it just keeps getting better.
Okay, but why Niagara? Because I've heard it said in the past that Niagara's too cold, Canada's too cold for that matter, to make decent wines. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that, I didn't have prescient foresight on global warming, but, in retrospect, sitting here today, and having owned this vineyard now for 25 years, what's truly amazing is the impact a small, 1 degree increase over time in temperature has done for our region. It has been a huge benefit for growers here to ripen their Bordeaux varietals in particular. You could always grow Pinot Noir and Chardonnay in a cool climate. That's what you're looking for, this kind of environment. The Bordeaux varietals, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cab Franc, a little harder to ripen in a traditional summer. But with global warming, it's been a huge, vastly improved opportunity for winemakers and for growers to produce fruit that can meet the kind of taste requirements of the average consumer. And then, of course, you move to, if you can't get what you want in any one season, you always have the option of moving to an appassimento approach, which we may want to talk about if you have time.
As a matter of fact, I do want to talk about that, but you came out of the financial industry, and I knew you from back in the Niagara capital days. How did you learn about? You actually make your own wine, don't you?
Well, I have people. I'm very much involved in the process, but I've always hired a winemaker to kind of really oversee it, because there's so much to do on a day-to-day basis. And I've had a full-time job, running Niagara, and I sold the business just recently after 30 years. And so I never had the time to devote full-time to winemaking, but very much involved in the process, and always had a hired winemaker producing my wine from the time I started. I mean, I bought the vineyard in 97, planted in 99, sold most of my fruit, all of my fruit virtually, for a decade, and only started taking a little bit of the fruit here from our vineyard for my little wine project, Rennie Estate Wine, in 2009. And so I've been making wine under our brand for now about 12 years.
Okay, and you said that you do it under the appassimento style. I know what that is, but a lot of people don't. Can you explain it?
Yes. So appassimento essentially translates to withering of the grape. It's a technique, an all-natural technique for harshly dehydrating grapes to create better and bigger aromas, bigger concentration in your fruit. In that drying process, you lose 35% of the water in the grape. So when you're ready, after 80 to 100 days of slowly drying these berries, when you're ready to make wine, which generally, if you're harvesting in October, that means in January, you are making wine with grapes that have quite a bit more sugar in them per grape than when you harvest it in October. And when you add your Super Tuscan and Zinfandel yeast to these dried grapes, you create a process, fermentation process, and of course the yeast converts the sugar to alcohol, and so these wines are very full-bodied and rich and luscious, and but they also have higher alcohol, which not everybody likes, but that's just a natural byproduct of the process. So this is, Amarone is the brand from Italy that probably most of your viewers would be familiar with. Mm-hmm. Amarone wines are made exactly in this style. The Romans were drying grapes 1,000 years ago to make wine. So some of us here in this region have decided that we can't make those full-bodied California Cab style wines every year from Ontario's cool climate. So let's utilize this appassimento process to give us that outcome from using the best fruit from your vineyard. So I've been doing that for a decade.
Get your sugar up. Okay, so now that brings me to the project that you currently have, Niagara Custom Crush. How did you actually make the wine? Did you have the facilities to do that?
Right. So, I never wanted to build my own winery with my name on it. I just didn't have time to allocate appropriately to that business full time. So a friend of mine, good friend here in the neighborhood, Martin Malivar, was kind enough to allow me, very, very, very well-known winery, Malivar Wine Company. Martin allowed me to bring my fruit to his winery and basically retain their team to produce my wine under my label at their facility, and then importantly to allow me to sell my wine at their retail store. And that was a real bonus because it was totally integrated. So make the wine there, sell the wine there. And for a decade, it's been a fantastic partnership, a great relationship. But as I was winding out of my day job and just retired in October from the Integra business, I knew I wanted to keep my hand in the game. I didn't want to again put my own name on a winery. Didn't have the runway's not that long, as we all know. So what I thought I could do is maybe create a facility to provide all these virtual winemakers like myself, people who don't own a winery but are making wine at a facility. And there's about 30, 35 of well-known virtual winemakers in the region right now. I would think all of them are probably making wine at a facility, but don't have the ability to sell that wine at that winery. The owner doesn't want the competition. So they're looking at our crush, Niagara Custom Crush facility, as a wonderful way to grow their business, accelerate their business, because not only can they make their wine, we're putting in a $5 million expansion starting this January. So it'll be a state-of-the-art facility. They can make their wine there, but they can also sell it at the crush. And they'll be, we're open 7 days a week with a fully knowledgeable hospitality team. So you have the ability, if you're a small producer, you don't want to be buying a vineyard and putting up the money to build a winery, you can actually now come to the Niagara Custom Crush studio and have a totally integrated partner.
Wow, that's fascinating. Okay, I confess I've made wine in my basement with a demijohn. I don't think that's who you're looking for as a partner, but do you have a threshold at which you have to have a certain number of liters to come and use our facility, and we'll work with you?
Yes, I would say that right now we're kind of open to the doors open to virtual winemakers, and so I think we have an ideal client type would be anywhere from 300 to 5,000 cases of wine, but we have some friends that we have our first set of clients for only making 50 cases, and we're happy to have them. But in time, we're really going to be targeting those producers who are serious. And today they may only be making 200 cases because under that model that they have, a distribution model is pretty restrictive. They can't really accelerate those sales when you don't have a retail store working for you every day. Coming to our place, I suspect from the conversations I'm having, one of the real attractive features of our facility is the ability to get retail sales every day. And that means the producer could say, well, I could probably target 400 cases now because I know I have a team selling my wine for me every day.
Okay. So just to wind things up, I mean, if you had to reduce it down to the hardest thing to do in growing your own or creating your own vineyard, is it the growing of the grapes? Is it the management of the farm? Is it the creation of the wine, or is it the selling of the wine?
That's a really good question. I think ultimately I would say selling of the wine is probably the most difficult. It's difficult for a whole bunch of reasons. Not only is there incredible competition from all over the globe, it's that you have really only one, up until recently, you've only had one really external distributor, the LCBO. And,
right.
As you know, they do a super job of providing an amazing range of wines from all over the world to consumers. And, as an Ontario producer, you're up against amazing wines coming out of Italy, Lebanon, from France, at price points that are really, really good. And, our cost of management here, cost of goods sold, are just because of the nature of the beast are high. And so it's hard to compete against a lot of these European wines in the LCBO. So if we had, if we had a deregulated industry like California or Oregon, anywhere in the States, you can buy wine at little grocery stores, little liquor stores, on little strip malls, anywhere you want. You can buy pretty good wine. Go to Total Wine, you can buy wine. But if you had that opportunity at little wine stores all over the place where small producers could access, I think you would see greater success. But I think the average wine brand owner is thinking about the vineyard, an amazing vineyard. He's thinking about making amazing wine, all the things you talked about in your options, and is not really thinking about the last part, which is the sales part. until he gets in there and he has like a whole bunch of inventory that's still sitting in his house or his warehouse because he can't sell it. So that's why I say, if you can get that one figured out, if you can get that sales distribution model figured out ahead of time, and you're confident that you can sell wine, then I would go to the vineyard as the next most important step in the process.
Graham, it sounds like you're filling that gap, and I'll make sure to make a stop on Niagara and see how you're doing with that appassimento technique. Thanks ever so much for your time today.
Awesome. Good to see you again, Pat. Happy Christmas, and I look forward to seeing you down in wine country soon.
I look forward to it too, Graham. Thanks so much.
Okay, cheers.
Graham Rennie is from Niagara Custom Crush.